that's enough of a talk. If anyone wants to ask any questions about this. Ron, I see you. Do you want to ask your question verbally rather than me reading it?
Okay. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
So my question relates to the method of self-enquiry,
Yes.
or Atma-vichara.
Yeah.
One can go on saying, who am I? What am I? And this inquiry could go on endlessly for days, months, or even years, and nothing happens to the individual making the inquiry. From my understanding, this inability to attain that breakthrough is generally attributed to the purity of one's mind and the accumulation of Vishaya vasanas. So having said this, what then is the technique of self-inquiry, or how is the technique of self-inquiry really done to be effective and to make any progress towards that breakthrough of Satchita? Thank you.
Okay, right. That's very good. Firstly, asking who am I is not investigating ourselves. That inquiry, but the term vichara means inquiry, not in the sense of asking questions, but inquiry in the sense of investigation. Bhagavan didn't say we should ask who am I. He said we should investigate who am I. However, in many books, it is recorded as if Bhagavan said ask, but actually what he said is investigate. That investigate, if it's translated as inquire, it then gives the implication of being asking. But Bhagavan wasn't talking about asking. Sometimes asking the question may be useful if it helps us turn our attention back towards ourselves. But the investigation begins only when our attention is turned towards ourselves. So long as our attention is on the question, on the words, who am I, that is something other than ourselves. That's not investigating ourselves. So merely asking the question is not self-investigation. If I give you a book and say, investigate what's written in it, if you sit there with the book closed and say, what's written in this book, what's written in this book, that is not investigating it. You need to open the book and see read what's inside. That is the investigation. So we need to turn our attention back towards ourselves. Bhagavan often expressed this, this investigation in terms of questions, but those questions are only meant to be pointers. For example, he said, what does it matter however many thoughts rise? If one vigilantly investigates to whom do these thoughts arise, it will be clear to me. What that implies is we should turn our attention back. That is, to whom to me. So our attention gets turned back to ourselves. Then we cling on to that me. Who is this me? Who am I? Again, it's not the question that matters. It is turning our attention towards ourselves and holding on to that I. So that's the first point to clarify. The second point to clarify is we shouldn't be expecting anything to happen, because what we are investigating is not anything other than just being. Our own existence we're investigating. Existence is not a happening, it's not a doing, it's a state of being. So long as anything is happening, what happens is phenomena happen. Things other than ourselves happen. But what is our nature? Our nature is just I am. I am is not a happening, it is a being, it is that which is ever existing. So we should not be expecting anything to happen. What we are looking for when we turn our attention back towards ourselves, nothing happens, but the more we turn our attention towards ourselves, the deeper we go in this investigation, the greater the degree of clarity of self-awareness. That clarity of self-awareness is not a happening. It is just it's just like if there are very thick clouds, you can't see the sun at all. As the clouds are getting thinned out, you begin to see the faint outline of the sun. somewhat, but again, sun is obviously an object. We're not talking about an object, but and so that's just an analogy I gave there. As we attend to ourselves more and more and more, we become more and more familiar with ourselves as something separate from all these adjuncts that we now mistake ourselves to be. That doesn't mean we've completely separated ourselves from them, but to a certain extent, that we become more clearly aware of ourselves as something distinct from these things. Of course, we become that clarity becomes full only when we turn the full 180 degrees and thereby leave everything else and then are aware of ourselves alone. That is the state of full clarity. So that is what we're aiming for. Regarding Vishaya Vasanas, Vasanas means inclinations. Vishaya means phenomena. So our inclination to phenomena, in other words, our inclination to attend to things other than ourselves, are what are called Vishaya Vasanas. So long as our Vishaya Vasanas are strong, it seems difficult to turn our attention back towards ourselves. Even if we manage to turn it back towards ourselves a little bit, again, it keeps on popping out. Doesn't matter. That's just the nature of things. That is the nature of the mind. The nature of ego is to be constantly going outwards. So we are now learning to swim against the current, so to speak. That the natural flow of the mind is to go outwards. We are trying to reverse that flow and go inwards. So it's Bhagavan said, there's no path that is easier than this. There's nothing easier than knowing ourselves. It seems difficult because our inclination to go outwards is stronger than our inclination to go inwards. So how do we cultivate that? The inclination to go inwards is what is called Sat Vasana. Sat means existent or being. So our inclination just to know and to be what we actually are, that is called Sat Vasana. That is the opposite of Vishaya Vasanas. So every time at each moment in our life, we have a choice. Either we allow our mind to go outwards, following wherever Vishaya Vasanas drag it, or we turn it back within. Every time we resist the inclination to go outwards and instead turn our attention back within, we are thereby weakening that inclination to go outwards and strengthening the inclination to go within. This is what is called purification of mind. That is, the impurities in the mind are the Vishaya Vasanas. To the extent that we weaken those Vishaya Vasanas and thereby strengthen the Sat Vasana, the mind is purified. So the most effective of all means, there are other means that all spiritual practices are aimed at purification of mind, but of all the means to purify the mind, the most direct and effective means is this self-investigation. That's simply turning our attention back and trying to be calmly self-attentive. Does that help, or is it still not clear?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I kind of understood what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I'll try and digest what you have said and maybe come back later with another question. Right. Thanks a lot.
What many people have difficulty understanding at first, that is, we are so familiar with attending to objects that attending just to the subject seems to be something, it seems to be very elusive. What is this I that I'm attending to? Though I can't find any I, some people say. Who is the I who can't find the I? That is, we're looking in the wrong direction. We're looking outside for some I. Where is this I? The I we're looking for is the one who is looking. So how to learn what it means to be self-attentive, the only way is practice. That is, Bhagavan has given us plenty of clues. We have to put those clues into practice. One of the clues he gave to help people, at first, if people found it difficult grasping what it means to be self-attentive, he said, okay, just go on repeating I, not rapidly, I, like that, but slowly and contemplatively, repeat the word I, but don't attend to the word I itself, attend to that to which that word I is referring. That is, every word we mention refers to something. If I say Arunachala, you think of a mountain. If I say Bhagavan, you think of Bhagavan. If I say car, you think of a car. If I say tree, you think of a tree. That is, all words refer to something. So when the word is mentioned, it brings the referent to our mind. So when we say the word I, what is that fundamental awareness to which this word I is referring? Okay, normally when we talk about I, we're referring to this body or this mind. I am sitting, I am thinking, I am talking, but underlying all these, there is something that makes us, how do we feel this body is I? How do we feel this mind is I? Because there is some background of self-awareness. That background of self-awareness now is seems to be mixed and conflated with these, so we mistake these to be I. But we need to try to be aware, we're not trying to attend to this body or mind. What is that background awareness in which these appear? To whom do these appear? So we have to think deeply about the clues that Bhagavan has given us and try to apply them in practice. We will then slowly, slowly become familiar with what is meant by being self-attentive, what is meant by investigating oneself.
Thanks, Michael.
Nuno, do you want to ask your question?
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Yes, thanks very much for being available for these questions. It's a lot. I know that a lot of things you already wrote on the happiness of being, but having it in this interactive way, I think it's a lot helpful, because I always get a lot of excuses not to read a big book. Anyhow, I have two topics that I would like to ask you that I think are connected with this second paragraph. So one of them is viveka. Viveka is a term that you have a lot of videos about it, a topic, and sometimes while I practice self-inquiry, I'm just too agitated in the mind, and sometimes it occurs to me to come to this negation of what I'm not. So the body, energy, the gross functions of the mind, the intellect, and the last one that I forgot, which is the Vishayas Vasanas.
Yes.
And where I established the connection with viveka, that you say that as we go and practice self-inquiry, we develop this ability of discern what is and what is not. And I kind of established that with, it comes a little bit from the intellect. Of course, I'm the most stupid person on earth because I don't even know who I am. So, but this discernment of slowly trying to see what I am, coming from this intellect, I know where it is the question, but I think it comes with, I guess in some point in time, this discernment that you develop with the practice also somehow gets into the fire and vanishes somehow in itself, or how does all this thing comes together? Because you were also saying that the point of all these, that these I'm not, and this is quite of an analytical process, and that's definitely not what I guess where we want to go. So in which terms does it work, this development of the discernment, to kind of get us towards the I that we are? I guess that's the question.
Right. That is the intellect. That is, viveka is a function of the intellect. Viveka means the ability to judge, distinguish, discern. This is a function of the intellect. But intellect functions on different levels. On the grossest level, it's a matter of reasoning. But at a deeper level, it's a matter of actually discerning, actually being able to distinguish, to see the difference. The analytical process of neti is a level of reasoning. That is, we reason. Since we are aware of ourselves in the absence of this body, that is, now we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. But in dream, we're not aware of this body at all, but we're aware of ourselves as I am.
So that's kind of a shallow way of discernment, let's say that.
Yes, it's shallow. It's not so deep. It's necessary to have that understanding, that conceptual understanding, but we are not this body, not this mind, all these things. That's necessary as a starting point. But that's it's relatively simple and straightforward to come to that conclusion. We don't need to be analyzing it for years together. We do a little bit of analysis and we clearly understand, yes, we are something other than this. So once we've understood that we are not any of these five sheaves, any of phenomena, anything that appears or disappears, then who am I? Then we need to, it's not a matter of asking the question, but it's a matter of investigating what is this I?
Yeah.
So,
because sometimes when I do the practice of self-inquiry, it's just the mind is too agitated, and these shallow ways, it's like a kind of tourism guide that helps me somehow go into deeper states of just repeating who am I, as it was a mantra, which is not a mantra. But when the agitation is present, these kind of things help me to guide me to go less shallow, if I can. That's why I was sorry.
If we consider Neti as a tourist guide, it is the tourist guide telling us where we shouldn't go. But where should we go? Where we should go is towards I. That is, every other place is out of bounds. What is not out of bounds is I. So we can consider it in that way. But having known that it's out of bounds, we should avoid going there. If we find ourselves going there, if we find ourselves going away from I, anything away from I is out of bounds. If we find ourselves wandering out, we have to bring ourselves back in. That we have to turn our attention back to ourselves. Yes, often our mind is agitated, too many preoccupations and things. We think thoughts are a problem. Thoughts are not a problem. The problem are the vasanas, the inclination to attend to those thoughts. Why thoughts seem to be a problem? Because we're inclined to attend to them. Thoughts are just the sprouting of the Vishaya vasanas. So it's at the level of their inclination we need to check it. So if we find we are thinking of this or that, or our mind is full of so many thoughts, so much agitation, that is because of what agitates the mind. The mind is agitated when it goes out. The more fast it goes out here and there and everywhere, the more agitated it becomes. If you want to calm the mind down, you need to discriminate. This is where the viveka comes. But
that's pretty clear with the practice. Sometimes it's totally, there's no space for the interest of the mind to go deeper in the thought, whatever. Sometimes it's so lost that it takes a huge amount of time, let's say like that, to come back.
At this point, but this is where often dwelling on Bhagavan's teachings, often reading his teachings, thinking about them, this is very, very useful. That is, the process is described as threefold: Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Sravana literally means hearing, but it means the studying, reading or hearing or think. And Manana is thinking deeply about these things, trying to make sense of what we've read, and trying to understand the reasons for it and everything. Nididhyasana is the practice. The Sravana and the Manana are constantly supporting Nididhyasana. If we're doing the Sravana or Manana correctly, it should be turning our attention back towards I. Because what is the subject we're talking about? It's all about I. So by dwelling on Bhagavan's teachings, that is a very great aid. Firstly, it takes our mind off other things, other worldly preoccupation. Also, Bhagavan's teachings are very reassuring in many ways. For example, Bhagavan says, whatever is to happen outwardly, it's already predetermined. We cannot change anything in our outward life. So all the things that we habitually worry about, there's no need for us to worry about, because it's already taken care of by Bhagavan. What is to happen is going to happen as it's going to happen. So we need not concern ourselves about that. So what Bhagavan has taught us about prarabdha is not to make us think constantly about what is prarabdha, what is free will, all these questions unnecessary. Bhagavan has given us an assurance. What is to happen is to happen.
With me, with my personal practice, is totally not like that. Sometimes I establish bridges between what Bhagavan tells us, and I even cannot say what it is about, but that's what it keeps me coming to the practice. So it's totally, even sometimes when I come to the practice that I don't want to be there, I started to kind of not to pay attention to this voice, because it's just stupid nonsense. And so coming back and back again, it's not that I don't need to agree with what the other person was saying, that doing practice of self-inquiry for ages, nothing happens. In my practice, it's not like that. There is not always like that, but quite often bridges are established. That's the carrot to the donkey that brings the donkey back again to practice it. That's all there is, and that's why I keep on practicing.
Well, this is the thing, we just have to keep on practice. What I was saying about prarabdha is, when our mind gets agitated, it's agitated by concern for things other than ourselves. We are concerned about what will happen, or what. Always agitation is about things other than ourselves. What Bhagavan has taught us, for example, about prarabdha, that is in order to free us, to make us understand that we need not be concerned about anything else. Everything is going to happen as it's going to happen. We cannot change things. The only useful thing we can do is to turn our attention back to ourselves, because whatever effort we make outwardly is of no avail. It's not going to change anything. Things are going to happen as they're going to happen anyway. So let us not be concerned with anything else. Our only task is to turn within. That is, so Bhagavan's teachings in so many ways are encouraging us, and also cajoling us and tempting us to go more and more and more within. So rather than some people think, oh, when the mind becomes agitated, it's good to try doing japa, or it's good to try doing pranayama or something. Okay, that may be good, but the most effective thing is to dwell on Bhagavan's teaching, because Bhagavan's teachings are constantly encouraging us to go back within, to try more and more and more. And we all try and we all fail. Failure doesn't matter in this path, because we cannot fail without trying. The fact that we're trying, that means we're moving in the right direction. So failure should also be welcomed. At least if we're not trying, then we don't fail.
Well, it contributes for the development of viveka, I guess.
Yeah, it does. And about viveka, about the term viveka, we have to understand this term at different levels. As I say, it's a function of the intellect, but the intellect functions at different levels. Even discriminating, I am not this body, that is the reasoning process, that is a form of viveka, but it's a shallow form of viveka. We have to go deeper and deeper. Viveka is essential up to the end, because what we are trying to do, viveka means distinguishing one thing from another. When we are turning our attention within, we are trying to distinguish this mere awareness I am from all adjuncts. How do we distinguish it? We distinguish it by focusing our attention on that mere awareness I am, and the adjuncts thereby drop off. So this is the process of self-investigation is a process of viveka, but it's a very deep and subtle kind of viveka.
But I guess the viveka gets to a point that is a lot deeper than what I was talking about, which is what it connects with the bhakti part of Nāṉ Ār, isn't it? Or it's
that is, bhakti is born out of viveka. That is the real bhakti, the bhakti that Bhagavan talks about, which is the love to turn within. That is born out of viveka. That is why our mind goes outwards, as Bhagavan says in the 14th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. The mind goes outwards, seeking happiness outside because of avivika. It is because of our non-discrimination, our failure to
Avivika, I guess.
Yes, avivika means the opposite of vivika, the non-vivika, the absence of the lack of vivika. We wrongly judge, oh, I'm going to get happiness if I eat this chocolate, I'll be happy. If I get a new car, I'll be happy. If I get a promotion, if I get a pay rise, I'll be happy. We're constantly seeking happiness in things outside ourselves because of lack of discrimination, because these things don't give happiness. Because we've got a desire for these things. If I've got a desire for a nice new car, the latest model or something, so long as I've got that desire, my mind is dissatisfied until I get that. Once I get that, I'm satisfied temporarily. But then I see my neighbor's got an even better car. So there's no end to satisfying desires. We think we can attain happiness by satisfying our desires, but for every desire we satisfy, another desire will pop up, because we cannot be satisfied with anything less than infinite happiness, because infinite happiness is our real nature. So how to experience infinite happiness? Only by turning within.
The other topic that I would like to ask you, I try to make this one fast, because it's actually, this one is a lot more elusive to me, that I really don't understand it. And you explain it already several times in your videos, but it's concerned with the deep sleep. When you say in deep sleep that we are aware of that we are, I totally cannot grasp what you say with this. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what is your point, Bhagavan's point, and your points. That on that you know that you are. That's quite elusive to me. I'm sorry, but I don't understand what's being said there.
That is, here again, it's a matter of viveka. We can understand by reasoning that if we think about it deeply, we can understand we are aware not just of two states, we're aware of three states. In two states, we're aware of ourselves as a body and we're aware of phenomena. In the third state, we're aware of nothing. But we're aware of having been in that state in which we were aware of nothing, because we existed and were aware of our existence in that state. So by reasoning, we can understand this, but it becomes clear to the extent to which we go deep in our practice. That is, the more here and now in this waking state or in a dream state, the more and more we attend to I, the more and more we become aware of our existence as something separate from this body and mind, but we now take to be I. So it becomes more and more clear to us.
So that's why in some of your videos that you tell us to try to slowly pay attention to the moment of your arrival. By arrival, I mean when you slowly came out of the deep sleep and you start your day. That's what you mean, to start to cling in these moments? Because of course, talking here with you, I can tell you that, okay, I was deep sleeping. I can say it was in the past. I cannot say that I was there or something, because it's not my understanding. But so that's why you say of this transition, let's say like that, from avidya to vidya, to slowly try to bring attention to that process. Is that part of the slowly understanding?
That is trying to
not understanding, but
trying to be self-attentive when we are about to fall asleep, and also trying to be, as soon as we notice we've woken up, trying to be self-attentive. That is beneficial, certainly. But when do we need to be self-attentive? What is the most important moment to be self-attentive? This moment now. If we're thinking about, I must, before I go to sleep, I must attend to myself, or as soon as I wake up in the morning, I must attend to myself. We are thinking about something other than ourselves, here and now. we will be able to more clearly discern that moment of waking and that moment of falling asleep. We'll be able to discern it more clearly if we practice here and now at this very moment. So, though that clue is given, I don't think we should dwell too much on that. I mean, it's a useful clue, but it's not something, because we have to be awake before we can start attending to ourselves. So we've already come out of sleep by the time we start. And when we're falling asleep, if we are holding on to self-attentiveness, we won't fall asleep. We fall asleep when we let go of the self-attentiveness. So these are useful. They're useful because we can get some clarity in those moments. But the most important, the clarity we can get then, we can get here and now. So this is the moment. The present moment is the important moment to attend to ourselves. All of them, if we focus on attending to ourselves here and now, since every moment we experience is here and now, we're taking care of all time. But so long, oh no, I'm not able to attend to myself long enough, so I must try and sit for 5 minutes and attend to myself. We are planning in the future. I will attend to myself for 5 minutes. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't matter about 5 minutes.
Not like that. It's not that we are taking a vacation from what we are. We are already. But for me personal, it's a lot easy to try to practice somehow less shallower in the beginning of the day that it is in the end of the day, because on the end of the day there is already so much stuff that I'm totally lost, and in the beginning of the day it tends to be easier for me, but
Bhagavan didn't lay down any do's and don'ts.
I know
what works for you, do that. Whatever is useful, we find out. This is the part of investigation. When we investigate, as we investigate, things become clearer to us. So what is the best moments to take opportunity? I mean, every moment is important, but certain moments may be more favorable. So we learn that by practice.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you. Olena, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
I would like to ask this question. In videos that I watched, you say that seeing this world means attending to this world, and attending to this world means attaching to this world. And I just, because before I thought that attachment is something when you are very much attached to some object, some person, or something, some idea, and so on. So this attachment that we are talking constantly about means this simple attachment that appears immediately as soon as we see this world, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, but attachment is the very nature of ego. As Bhagavan says, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes. So the nature of ego is grasping. That grasping is that we're attaching ourselves. So when we attend to something, we are, so to speak, attaching ourselves to that thing. We are grasping that thing in our awareness. That is what Bhagavan means by grasping form. So now our aim is not to grasp any form, but to grasp that which is aware of all these. Who am I?
Yes, yes, of course, I understand this basic. Yes, it's clear. But I thought that attachment itself, it is when we are attached to something consciously.
Yes. That is another form of attachment. That is, all these things were at different levels. At the subtlest level, our mere attending to something is attaching ourselves to things. But there are certain things we are very attached to. I'm very attached to this person called Michael, because I've been, for the last 65 years or whatever, this Michael is what I seem to be. So I'm strongly attached. I identify myself with Michael.
Yes.
This is the nature of ego. So some attachments are stronger than other attachments. I mean, everything we attend to, we are attaching ourselves to that. But many of these things, it's a fleeting attachment. It's not really a strong attachment. Some news. What is the latest news that's going on there? If we're interested in the news that we are interested in today, we'll have forgotten about tomorrow. There'll be some new news, and it's constant. We're constantly flitting from one thing to another thing.
Yes, it is when we talk about news, but when we talk about just seeing this world, because, for example,
Yes.
If we look at animals, for example, they also see this world, and but I understand, for example, that attachment is also, maybe it is habit to go out because we have this developed this habit, because we have this Vishaya Vasanas.
Yes.
So we have this habit, we go out, we as a result see this world, and this is which is called attachment. Because, for example, if you look at animals, they also can see this world.
Yes.
So they also have some, but just it's not clear for me whether they have this attachment, for example, how they can have this attachment, or what it is. And for example, when Jivan Mukta sees this world, of course we understand that he doesn't, or she doesn't see this world in our understanding, and just Prabha walks, and they are still in this body. But this, of course, it's something absolutely different. It's not attachment already at all. So it just they even don't see this world, which is also very interesting to me. How it is possible? I mean, yes, because they see only self. But anyway, so I mean that. I before thought that attachment, grasping, yes, I understand grasping, for example, but when we just, to me, the only interesting question was that just seeing, when we see this world, when we miss this point, when we can realize our true nature, because we see it, and we miss constantly this point, and it is called attachment finally. This is
yes. That is, yeah. I mean, the same words are used in different senses in different contexts, but basically attachment is one thing. There are gross forms of attachment, very subtle forms of attachment, but at its subtlest form, attachment is nothing but our mind going outwards and attending to anything other than ourselves. So the attachment that we now have for other things, we have to develop attachment for ourselves.
Yes.
We have to be attached just to I am.
Yes. Thank you. I just wanted to hear this, that it is just the subtlest level of our grasping. This
and that attachment to other things is called desire. Attachment to ourself is called bhakti.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
To ourself means ourself as we act to the fundamental awareness I am, not to this person. That is a desire.
Svarupa, yes, I like this word because to me this Svarupa as a term and meaning of the term, that it is our real nature, to me always is big enigma, because we have some nature that maybe we don't even understand what kind of nature we now have, but this nature that we have now, they constantly puts us in situations related to suffering or to joy, and to constant ups and downs, I mean. And at the same time, there is our true nature, which is Ananda, and this is our Svarupa. Yes, I like it. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, right. And David Gray.
Hello, Michael, it's Lorraine. I'm using David's computer because mine is golden. It gets very hot.
Right.
You partly answered my question with Nuno. I wanted to ask you, I've been following Ruda Bali Yogi, Shiva Ruda Bali Yogi, and he says that most important thing is to meditate in between the eyebrows, withdraw the world, have no imagination, think of no colors, have no thoughts, just watch the thoughts go past. Jangama meditation. And he suggests we do it for at least an hour a day and hold our thoughts and have nothing else. But from what I'm hearing from you is Bhagavan says all of life should be a meditation. All the time we should be constantly.
And also this place is an object. Thoughts are objects. Everything other than I is an object. So Bhagavan doesn't ask us to meditate on objects. He asks us to meditate on the subject.
Yeah, but Shiva Ruda Bali Yogi says, if you keep concentrating on here, slowly everything will disappear. Your mind will in turn. But you say this is not right.
It's not right. Things will disappear only when we stop attending to them. When we attend to ourselves alone, things will disappear. Or when we fall asleep, everything disappears. That's because we withdraw our attention from everything else. This body, this point here is part of this body, and this body is part of the world. So long as we are attending to here or to any place in the body, our attention is still on the world. It's still on something other than ourselves. So long as we're watching the thoughts go by, those thoughts are other than ourselves. We need to attend only to I and to nothing other than I. That is the way to free ourselves. That is the way to separate ourselves from the world.
So what Bhagavan suggests or recommends is that we have silence and all the time, constantly try and think about it. We don't sit and meditate for an hour or anything. Would that be helpful?
Silence is our real nature. So to the extent we are attending to ourselves, we are abiding in silence. To the extent we allow our attention to go out towards anything other than ourselves, anything other than I, that is noise. There was something else you were saying, but yes.
Meditation.
Yeah, but meditation, that is every moment in our life, we have a fundamental choice, whether we attend to something other than ourselves or attend to ourselves. This is the basic choice we have. So at every moment, but we turn our attention back towards ourselves, that is meditation. It may be just for a second, but a second of meditation, if you're meditating on I, that every second counts. Every second is precious. So throughout the day, because of our strong inclination to go outwards, most of the time we may be attending to other things, but so long as we are repeatedly trying to attend to I, that is meditation. It may be beneficial sometimes to have, for example, when you're at work, so many other things are demanding your attention. So only to a certain extent, you can keep your attention on I. But when you go home in the evening, you sit down quietly, and you've got nothing immediate to occupy your mind, at those moments you can go a bit deeper into this self-attentiveness. So Bhagavan never recommended setting aside fixed times, but whenever our mind is free of other occupations, attending to ourselves is very beneficial. I mean, we need to take opportunity wherever it presents itself. So the times of when we don't have other preoccupations, when we can just be quiet, relatively quiet, those are good moments to try. But that doesn't mean we should be trying only at such times.
No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right.
Thanks.
And
I think, Michael, the people with the raised hands are now after the text. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
So the first question, because there are 3 here, and then after that, I think it's unfortunately then the raised hands. So the first one is from Prasad, and he says that Bhagavan mentions, by the way, Prasad, did you want to ask yourself? I presume not. Okay. So he says that Bhagavan mentions that it is not enough to reduce the vrittis or to purify the mind, but the mind has to be killed. Does killing the mind mean simply continuing to abide in the self?
Bhagavan never said That is, Bhagavan said, don't be concerned about thoughts. That doesn't mean, but that is, so long as we are concerned about thoughts, about vrittis, our attention is going on something other than ourselves. Our aim is simply to attend to ourselves. When we attend to ourselves, the vrittis will automatically subside, because vrittis can exist only to the extent that we attend to them. No thought can rise unless we attend to it. So if if a thought rises, instead of following that thought, if we turn our attention back towards ourselves, that thought will subside. But what we shouldn't do is avoiding thought as our aim. If we're constantly trying to avoid thought, our attention is on the thoughts. Or another thought has come, how do I avoid this thought? Rather than pushing thoughts away, turn within, and thereby thoughts will automatically retreat, because thoughts exist only to the extent we attend to them. To the extent we attend to ourselves, we are thereby depriving them of our attention. That's one thing. Purification of mind is absolutely essential. That is what sadhana practice is all about. The most effective means to purify our mind, the impurities in the mind are vishaya vasanas, our inclinations to go outwards. They are the impurities. If we turn our attention within, that is the most effective means to reduce the strength of the vishaya vasanas. So any spiritual practice you do is useful only to the extent it purifies the mind. But the most direct and efficacious means to purify the mind is self-investigation. If you are attending to yourself, you are thereby weakening the inclination to go outwards, and that is purification of mind. So purification of mind is absolutely necessary. Only when the mind is purified to a certain extent will we be willing to let go of everything else and turn our attention the full 180 degrees within. And only when we turn 180 degrees within is the mind eradicated. So our aim is to eradicate the mind. But in order to eradicate the mind, we need to purify it. But the means to eradicate mind and the means to purify it are one and the same. Attend to yourself, self-attentiveness, that is the means to purify the mind and eventually to eradicate mind.
Okay, and the second question, did you want to ask this, Alex? I think you had your hand up as well. Otherwise, I can read it out.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Mr. James, I wanted to ask about, we're talking about awareness.
Yes.
And usually you refer to pure awareness is the awareness that is aware of itself, like the feeling
Nothing
of I
other
am.
than itself, yes.
Yes. And isn't it closer to the Kashmir Shaivism view rather than Advaita Vedanta, where the pure awareness is not something you can experience?
Right. I don't know a lot about Kashmir Shaivism, but I have heard some traditional Vedantins trying to draw this distinction. But this is the trouble. This is the trouble with book learning. That is, it is said in all Vedantic texts, but pure awareness is swayam prakasha, it's self-shining. But I've heard some of them saying it's self-shining, but it's not self-aware. What does that mean? I am not able to understand, because when it is said self-shining, that means it is shining to itself by its own light. So nothing other than pure awareness can know pure awareness. Bhagavan says in so many, makes it so clear in so many places. For example, in verse 26 of Upadēśa Undiyār, he says, taṇaiyuṇ, knowing that being oneself alone is knowing oneself. So what does that imply? The very nature of awareness is to know itself. In verse 23 of Upadēśa Undiyār, he says, because of the non-existence of any awareness other than what is, to know what is awareness. That implies, he's talking there about knowing. So the very nature of awareness is to know itself. And Bhagavan says in the first paragraph, the first sentence of Nāṉ Ār, he concludes by saying, to attain that happiness which is one's real nature, tan sabhavamana chukate adeya, taṉaiyuṉ tan aridal vendam, oneself, knowing oneself is necessary. So if pure awareness doesn't know itself, how can, it makes no sense at all to say pure awareness doesn't know itself. That is the very nature of awareness, because it is Swayam Prakasha, it's self-shining, it knows itself by its own light. It doesn't need anything else to know itself. That's the very meaning of Swayam Prakasha. What they say in Kashmir Shaivism, they bring in this, apparently, that is, I've heard, I've not listened to anything about Kashmir Shaivism, but I've heard Advaita talk, people who talk from the perspective of Advaita. They say in Kashmir Shaivism, they say not only Swayam Prakasha, self-shining, but also vimersa. I think vimersa means reflexive awareness, but maybe in Kashmir Shaivism, they consider awareness, knowing awareness, as one thing knowing another thing. It is true, pure awareness doesn't know itself as an object. It knows itself just as I am. So knowing oneself as I am is not knowing an object. So I think the trouble with trying to understand Advaita from textbooks is one, particularly that is, in Advaita, there are many different levels of explanation. Bhagavan's teachings are extremely simple. He has simplified the whole thing. But the more traditional approach is what is called Srishti Drishtivada, which gives rise to an extremely complicated philosophy. And the more complicated your philosophy is, the more scope for confusion. So there is a lot of confusion. For example, a lot of the traditional Vedantins say, just like the eye can't see itself, we can never see ourselves. Why can the eye not see itself? Because the eye is jada. I mean, the eye is always looking outwards, but we are not jada. We are Chaitanya, we are awareness. So awareness is, we are always aware of ourselves as I am. Being aware of ourselves as I am is the very nature of pure awareness. How can there be any, how could it be possible to be aware without being aware that one is aware? So being aware that one is aware implies being aware I am. So that is the fundamental awareness, is the awareness I am. That is the real awareness. That is what is shining in all the three states. So this type of confusion, it comes partly out of overcomplicating Advaita unnecessarily, which is why Bhagavan has avoided all this Srishti Drishti Vada, which leads to so much complication. Bhagavan gives us a simple Drishti Srishti Vada, which is a far simpler and a far less cumbersome philosophy, and also far deeper. It's a far deeper explanation, what Bhagavan gives us. And because it's simpler, there's less scope for confusion. So Bhagavan makes it very, very clear, but knowing ourselves is our real nature. The problem is, we are always aware I am. The problem we face now is we are not aware just I am, we're aware I am so-and-so. This awareness I am is mixed and conflated with adjuncts. All we need to do is to separate ourselves from the adjunct. How do we separate ourselves from the adjunct? Only by clinging to I am, by clinging to that fundamental awareness, by being aware of awareness, as some people put it. Bhagavan generally doesn't talk of, sometimes he talks of awareness, being aware of awareness. In some places, in Guru Vachakukavaya, I think there are some such references, but generally Bhagavan talks about oneself, being aware of oneself. Because what is oneself? Awareness. But if we talk about awareness, it's very easy to take awareness to be some other thing. The awareness we're talking about is only I am. Does that help to answer that question, Alex?
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah. If you understand Bhagavan's teachings deeply and clearly, and then if you listen to the traditional people who talk of Vedanta from talk of Dvaita from a traditionalist perspective, from all the old texts, you will find there's a lot of confusion in what they say. And we can easily see through that confusion in the clear light of Bhagavan's teachings. That is, Bhagavan didn't contradict anything they say. Bhagavan has clarified it. He's refined and clarified it. And he's presented Advaita in a far clearer and simpler way than it's ever been presented before. But not only is it simple and clear, it's also extremely deep.
Yeah, but I feel that maybe this is the difference between, I don't know, Bhagavan and Nisargadatta Maharaj, for example.
Quite possibly. I don't know a lot about Nisargadatta, but a lot of things that people quote to me, it seems to me there's confusion there. But Nisargadatta belongs to some traditional, I don't know, some sampradaya, some particular lineage. Yes. So I don't know how they interpret Advaita. But the reason Bhagavan came was to simplify and clarify. And what is most important about Bhagavan's teachings are far more practical than any other type of explanation of Advaita. That is, if you listen to the traditional Advaitins, they sometimes say, no, there's nothing you can do. It's just a matter of knowledge. You just have to recognize the fact. How do we recognize the fact? Oh, no, if you're talking about doing, that's yoga. There's no doing here. Yes, it's true. We cannot know ourselves by doing anything. But how doing is the very nature of the mind. How to avoid doing, the mind has to subside. How will the mind subside? Only by our attention. Only when we attend to ourselves will we subside. So Bhagavan, in so many ways, Bhagavan has refined and clarified it.
Hey, thank you.
It may not appeal to all people, because one of the reasons why that is, a lot of the explanations of Advaita are on the level of Shrishti Drishtivada. That is, creation comes first, and there are many jivas, and it's a much more complicated philosophy. Why do they make all these concessions? It's because most people are not ready to accept the simple fact that this is just a dream. There's no evidence that what we experience now is anything but a dream. Because people don't want to consider everything to be a dream, a lot of Advaita is making concessions to people who don't yet have the viveka and vairagya, which is required for the deep heart of Advaita. Bhagavan often said, what's the use of teaching so many things and later telling people, no, that's not correct, the actual truth is this? Why not tell the truth as it is from the beginning? And what is the practice? The ultimate practice by which we can know ourselves is only self-investigation, only by turning our mind within. So why to tell people, first you have to do pranayama, then you have to do japa, then you have to, why to tell all these things when none of these things are directly going to lead to the goal? Anyone and everyone can attend to themselves if they have the inclination. So Bhagavan pushes us in the deep end because he doesn't want to delay things. He wants us to get right back to the back. Bhagavan isn't saying it's easy. He does say it's easy, but he doesn't trivialize the difficulties that we face, because so long as we have strong Vishaya vasanas, we've got work to do to weaken them. So Bhagavan never says, oh, practice, like some of these modern, what we call neo-Advaitins. Oh, you are that. You don't have to do anything. You're just that. You just recognize you're that. There's no ego, they say. All this is very superficial and trivial. Bhagavan recognizes, but we are up against a problem. That is, the nature of ego is to have Vishaya vasanas. And so long as those Vishaya vasanas are strong, we won't be willing to surrender ourselves. So we need to put in as much practice as is necessary to weaken these Vishaya vasanas by means of self-attentiveness. And eventually that same self-attentiveness will lead to the destruction of ego. So Bhagavan has made things so much simpler, so much clearer, and shown the way how to go deep in Advaita, rather than just all this endless philosophizing, endless manana, Sravana manana. They're very good at Sravana manana, but unnecessarily complicated Sravana manana, the traditional Advaitins. Bhagavan has simplified it. Because, why Bhagavan came? He came because basically people had lost the way. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the first, in the beginning of chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I taught this first he says he taught it to so-and-so, who taught it to so-and-so, and then the Raja Rishis understood it. But in the course of time, it got corrupted, it perished, this truth. So now I am telling you this truth again. So it is natural over the course of time, the pure teachings get diluted by too much philosophizing, too much thinking. The way gets lost. So because people had lost, everyone says, all Advaitins say, yes, vichara is necessary. Only by vichara you can get Brahmanyana. But what is vichara? They think they're investigating in texts is vichara. That's why Bhagavan says in the 16th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, what is the use of that? That is, all the texts will tell you, but in order to attain liberation, it's necessary to restrain the mind. It's necessary to keep the mind in check. When this truth is known, we should investigate in order to keep the mind in check, in order to subdue the mind, in order to bring about the subsidence of mind. We need to investigate who am I? We cannot investigate what we are in books. We don't need a mirror to see that we are Raman. We have to know ourselves by our own eye of knowledge, he says. So here he's saying what we need to investigate is within ourselves, not in texts, not endless reading of texts. So in so many subtle ways, Bhagavan has pointed out the shortcomings in the traditional understanding. So I hope this, I know I've gone a bit off your original question, but my answer to your original question is yes, according to Bhagavan, the very nature of awareness is Swayam Prakasa. Swayam Prakasa means it knows itself by its own light. It shines to itself by itself, because there's nothing other than itself to illuminate or to know it.
Thanks.
And what is the nature? What are we all seeking? Atma-jnana. What does jnana mean there? Jnana means awareness in that context. That is, Atma-jnana means pure self-awareness. So how can we have jnana if we don't know, if awareness doesn't know itself? How can it be called Atma-jnana? Atma-jnana would then be an inappropriate term, because there'd be no jnana there, no knowing, no awareness.
Michael,
yes.
Next question is from Kiran, who's on a train or he's traveling, can't ask it. He says, I'm currently traveling. I may not be able to ask the question myself. Would you kindly ask Michael to explain the context or in context of verses 70 and 102 of Akṣaramaṇamālai?
Oh.
I'm not sure if you can answer that right now or not.
Yeah, I can. Just a moment. What Bhagavan says in verse 70, peyarniṇaittiḍavē piḍittiṛut taṉaiyuṉ perumaiyā aṟivār Arunachala. That is what Bhagavan says there. Arunachala, as soon as I thought of your name, catching me, you drew me to you. Who can comprehend your greatness? That is, this was Bhagavan's actual experience. That is, as he says in the first verse of Arunachala Ashtakam, from my very young age, before knowing anything else, the name Arunachala was shining in my mind as something very great. Wait a second, I'll just get the aṟivār siruvaya. So from a young age, when I didn't, devoid of any other knowledge, Aruṇācalam miha peridu. It shone in my mind that Arunachala is something very great. So that name Arunachala was, that is the idea Arunachala is something very great, was in his mind from his very, very young age. And when he heard that name, when a relative told him that when he asked him, where have you come from? I come from Arunachala. Bhagavan was shocked. What? Arunachala is a place you can go to. Because for him, all he knew is Arunachala is something that is the supreme, the greatest of all things. So, and that Arunachala, that relative said, yes, of course, it's, don't you know, Arunachala is Tiruvannāmalai. Then only Bhagavan came to know that Arunachala is actually a place on earth. But still, he understood Arunachala is something, perumaiyā raṛivā. Who can understand your greatness? That is, by the mere thought of that name, Arunachala, Bhagavan was drawn. When Bhagavan says, as soon as I thought of your name, you caught me and dragged me to you. You drew me to you. That means we can understand that in two senses, because a lot of these verses we can understand in two ways. That is, outward, physically, Bhagavan was drawn to Arunachala, but even before his body was drawn to Arunachala, Arunachala had caught him and pulled him within, because Arunachala is that which is always shining in our heart as eye. Bhagavan often said, you're that which is shining in my heart as eye. So the name of Arunachala is Arunachala, it is also I. So thinking of your name means thinking of I. That's also, we can take, that these verses give room for so many different levels of interpretation. So as soon as we think of I, we really turn our attention back to that which is denoted by that name I, we'll be caught and dragged within. So we can understand it on so many different levels. Like all the verses, this is very beautiful. So that's verse 70. And what is the other one? Is it Arunai and Dranayan? What was the other verse number?
Sorry, the other verse number, it's
102, is it?
102.
Yes, I guessed that. Okay. In 102, Bhagavan says, Arunai and Dranayan, Arulkani Patenum, Arulvari Tapumo Arunachala. What this means is, Arunachala, as soon as I thought of you, that a lot of these, we have to add words here. The actual meaning is, Arunachala, as soon as thought as Arunai, because we have to, I is understood there. Arunachala, as soon as I thought of you as Arunai, that is what's implied. Arunai is a name of Arunachala. Specifically, the town is called Arunai, but we can also take it as referring to the hill. I was trapped in the net of your grace. Will the net of your grace fail? That is, the very nature of his net of grace is to catch devotees, and it will never fail in that purpose of catching devotees. So, and as soon as we think of that name Arunachala, we are caught in that net of its grace, and he will not fail. It may seem that we haven't yet been trapped. We're still running here and there, but we are, whether we know it or not, we've been trapped, and slowly, slowly, the noose will be tightening around us, and we'll have less and less scope for going outwards and getting ourselves into trouble until finally that noose will tighten and we'll be pulled back within. So I hope that answers that. So the name of Arunachala, as Bhagavan indicates in these two verses, the name of Arunachala is so powerful. Why? Because it denotes that which is shining in our heart as eye. And what is shining in our heart as eye, that alone is what is real. Arunachala also shines outside in the form of a hill, but what Arunachala primarily is that which is ever dancing in our heart as I, as he says in the second verse of Arunachala Pancharatnam. So I hope that answers that question. And
I think now it's Srini, and then there's an anonymous question, and then David. Jean had his hand up for a long time, but it kind of lowered it. I'm not sure.
Yes, I had a very, very short question for you, Michael. Hello, Michael.
hello.
The question I had for Michael was, why is Atma-vichara called the direct path?
What is it we're seeking to know? We're seeking to know ourselves. To investigate ourselves is the direct path to know ourselves. What is the direct way to see the sun? Look at it. What is the direct way to see ourselves? Look at ourselves. Any other path, looking at anything else, cannot be a direct path. When our aim is to know ourselves, looking at ourselves is the only direct path to see ourselves. Looking at anything else is at best only an indirect way. It may help. All other paths are useful to the extent that they purify the mind. But whatever other paths you may follow, sooner or later, you need to turn and look at yourself, because how can you see yourself if you don't look at yourself? So this is the only direct path.
Thank you, Michael.
People call this word used by Bhagavan, direct path. So it's become very popular among the neo-Daytons. They talk about direct paths, single. How can there be, between A and B, there can only be one direct path, the straight line. There can't be many straight lines between A and B. So where are we now? We've now risen as ego. What's the straight path? To turn back within.
Michael, I had another question about how Atma-vichara differ from other sadhana practice.
All other sadhana practices entail attending to something other than ourselves. Atma-vichara entails attending to ourselves alone. Simple.
And is there a clear consensus on the practice of Atma-vichara?
A clear consensus?
Yes, because
people understand it in their own ways. What Bhagavan has taught is very, very clear. But as Bhagavan said, this is not an objective path, so it can't be shown objectively. Bhagavan has given us plenty of clues, and his clues make it very, very clear. But what Atma-vichara is nothing but other than being self-attentive. If anyone disagrees with that, then they haven't understood Bhagavan correctly. So
thank you,
we're
Michael.
not looking for consensus. If we and Bhagavan have a consensus about what he means, that is sufficient. Let everyone else disagree with us. So long as we are agreeing with Bhagavan's consensus, so long as our understanding is in line with what Bhagavan wanted us to understand, that is sufficient. Because this path, nobody can follow this path for us. We each have to follow the path ourselves. So we have to understand, that's why we need to think very deeply about what Bhagavan has taught us, because all that Bhagavan has taught us is pointing only to this. That is, whatever Bhagavan taught us, it has practical implications. It's all pointing our attention back towards ourselves. That is the sole purpose of all of Bhagavan's teachings. Attend to yourself. So I hope that I adequately answered.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael, we have 4 more questions. There's Srini, then there's Anonymous, then there's David, and then there is Marianne.
Right.
So I just want to ask you, just for the sort of the scheduling, did you just want to go on until all the questions are answered?
As far as possible. I mean, within limits.
Okay. No, it's just
not beyond midnight.
Okay. So yeah. Okay, great. So it's Srini now, I think, and then I'll just pose the anonymous question after Srini.
Right. Okay, Srini.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. Namaste to everyone. I love your teachings. It's Bhagavan teachings through you. And when I went through different teachings, like different kinds of meditations and teachings all over the world, like probably 10 of different times, and finally found the best that I can get in this life as Bhagavan's teachings. Yes. This is the most direct, very simple, very close to what I'm aligned with. And I can talk about whole day about Bhagavan's teachings compared to other teachings, but there's no point in doing that.
Yes.
So that is definitely the best way I can see it. The question I have is, I don't believe in this morning meditations, like night meditations, where we just set a separate time and just be yourself or meditate and just come back to normal self, do all the ego, all the world activities. I always believe in that Bhagavan is there in every moment. We just has to hold on that kind of being self, being yourself, being a pure awareness.
Yes.
But with the question, the challenging part is I practice self-enquiry all the time, most of the time, wherever I come to the thought, wherever I see Bhagavan, wherever I come. But with the settings of family settings, especially with the anger kids and wife and all the distractions that we see, all the outward pulling we see, it seems so difficult. It seems so difficult to be yourself or to be with this Bhagavan. Is there something that you can show some light on how to have Bhagavan all the time? It is how to be with that kind of thought all the time, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter what you talk, no matter how you do it. It's not leaving that grace, not leaving that kind of holding the thought. Yeah, thank you.
If we have viveka, if we understand what Bhagavan has taught us everything in our life is happening according to divine will, or prarabdha, whatever you call it. Divine will and prarabdha amount to the same thing. So Bhagavan has said, for example, in the 13th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan begins by saying, not giving the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than Atma-chintana. In other words, being so keenly self-attentive, but we give no room to the rising of any other thought, that is giving ourselves to God. After saying that, he then, so basically what Bhagavan is to being so keenly self-attentive, we don't need to attend to anything else. We don't think of anything else. But Bhagavan, what about my family? What about all these? I've got so many responsibilities. Bhagavan says in the next sentence, however much burden you place on God, he will bear all of it. So we can leave all worries about our family, about what we need to do and all these things. We can leave everything to him. Everything will be taken care of. Everything is being, whether we attend to it or not, everything is being taken care of. Then he goes on to say that since the one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. Karyas here means whatever needs to happen or whatever needs to be done or ought to be done or whatever needs to happen. Everything is being made to happen by him. So since he is driving all karyas, instead of yielding ourselves to it, why should we be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? And then he gives the analogy of the train. Though we know that the train is bearing all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily leaving our small luggage placed on it, suffer bearing the luggage on our head? So what Bhagavan says in this paragraph is extremely radical. He first says we should attend to ourselves so keenly, but we don't give the slightest room to the rising of any other thought. And then he explains why it is not necessary to give room to because everything is happening by that one Parameshwara Shakti. Why are you concerned about you have to go to work, you have to earn for your family, you have to do this, you have to do that, because you've got a family, you've got so many responsibilities? Why are you so concerned about these things? because you don't have sufficient faith in Bhagavan, whatever actions your mind, speech, and body need to do in order to support your family, they will be made to do by Bhagavan. So you can surrender your mind, speech, and body to him. You need not be concerned about these things at all. All you need be concerned about is attending to I. So we need to have such clear viveka and such intense vairagya. We don't have that now. None of it. I certainly don't have that. My mind is always going upwards. But how do we cultivate that? By persevering in this practice. That is, as Bhagavan said, when the cow has run away from the shed, we are not to go chasing it with a stick. We are to cajole it back by attempting it with green grass. This is what we are doing. Slowly, slowly, we are cajoling our mind to attend to I. It may seem that our efforts are very, very feeble, but we're doing it very little. I mean, Bhagavan has said we should be doing it nirantara swarupa smarana, uninterrupted swarupa smarana. If you have that, that's sufficient, Bhagavan said. But that's a very big achievement if you can have that. But we don't have that yet. Our mind is constantly being dragged hither and thither. But slowly, slowly, we are trying to cultivate this habit of self-attentiveness. The more we attend to ourselves, the more we're weakening our Vishaya Vasanas and strengthening the Sat Vasana. So this is the way forward. We can only progress from the point where we are now. If we've got strong Vishaya Vasanas, what to do about it? Begin here and now, practicing this self-attentiveness to the extent that we can. At least if we try, that itself is a great achievement, because to the extent we try, to that extent we are weakening the Vishaya Vasanas. So failure doesn't matter. As I said earlier, you cannot fail unless you've tried. So if we fail, we should be proud of ourselves, because at least we've tried.
Yeah, I can see that one.
When the success comes, we will be out of the picture. We will no longer be there to say, I have succeeded. So let us embrace this failure and go on trying. It doesn't matter how many times we fail, go on trying.
Yeah, well, one thing I came to mind is, there is a beautiful saying in Indian text where everything, even the ant won't bite you without Parameshwara's order. It is like, that is the slightest of this thing doesn't do. So everything happens with the order of the Bhagavan, order of Bhagavan.
Bhagavan often used to say, Avanaralandri or Anuvamasayadu, except by his grace, not even an atom moves. Everything is happening by his. If we know that, if we really believe that, we can leave everything to him. We don't have to care about anything. All we need to care about is attending to I.
But it seems, when I see this one, I feel like sometimes we might have to do a lot of vairagya, like leaving this worldly activities, but it is not possible. It is definitely not a good idea. We cannot leave.
Vairagya is not changing our outward activities. That is, the activities that the body and mind are destined to do, they will be made to do. Vairagya is turning your attention within and thereby not identifying yourself with this body, speech, and mind. That is, the body and mind called Srini are destined to do certain things. Let Srini do his work. Let Srini attend to what he has to attend to. You attend to what you have to attend to. So what you have to attend to is I.
It feels like I had to make it two separate and said, I myself leave it to Bhagavan and let Bhagavan drive me, use me to do all these worldly things. Let Bhagavan
isn't using you. He's using your body, speech, and mind.
Me means like my body and mind.
You need to separate yourself. So long as as you take this body, speech, and mind as me, as I, then naturally the doership is there. How do we overcome this doership? We have to break this identification. How do we break the identification? Only by holding on to I. To the extent we hold on to I, we are thereby separating ourselves.
So we still do these worldly things, but we
no, you don't do any worldly things. Bhagavan didn't say don't even give room to the slightest room to the rising of any thought. But body and mind, let them do their worldly things, because body and mind are worldly. They belong to the world. Let them do the worldly things. You
we just have to
keep yourself aloof.
Okay. Thank you.
It sounds a very high thing I'm saying.
No,
that is what we're aiming for. Yes, we are caught up with this body and mind, and we constantly think, I'm doing this. That is, so long as there is ego, there will be doership. The only way to overcome doership is to eradicate ego. But to the extent we turn our attention within, we are thereby weakening the hold of ego and its doership.
Thank you. Thank you. That explains it. Thank you so much.
Well, Michael, there's a question. It's an anonymous question, and it goes something like this, just to make it a bit clearer. It basically says that those of us who've been drawn to Ramana, and I think she or he means have been inclined to have had suffering and pain that seem to have drawn us to seek out Bhagavan. It's as if Bhagavan came to us seeing that we wanted to know him through pain and suffering, which can this be a touchstone of spiritual growth, this pain and suffering, or is it not the case? I think the question means that many of us have come to Bhagavan through pain and suffering. That's what's drawn us to him. And it's as if Bhagavan came to us seeing that we wanted to know him through pain and suffering. And in this case, is suffering a sort of a touchstone of spiritual growth, or is this not the case? There's a second question, but maybe we can do this first.
Yes. Bhagavan says at the end of the 14th paragraph, but that's a paragraph where he talks about happiness. What is called the world is only thought. When the world disappears, that's when thought ceases, the mind experiences happiness. When the world appears, it experiences dukkha. And I think he says elsewhere in that paragraph, earlier on, he says, when the mind comes out, it experiences dukkha. So dukkha, dissatisfaction, misery, suffering, whatever, however we describe it, that is the very nature of, so long as we allow our mind to go outwards, we are suffering. We may seem to be, oh, I'm enjoying my life and everything, but deep down we are dissatisfied. There's a deep underlying dissatisfaction. That is what is driving our mind outwards. Why is our mind going outwards? Because we're seeking happiness outside. So long as we allow our mind to go outwards, we are suffering. Why Bhagavan came and taught us turn within? Because Bhagavan's aim is that we should be happy. So yes, we do suffer, and in a sense we have to be grateful for the suffering, because the suffering opens our eyes to the fact of our own foolishness, the folly of allowing our mind to go outwards is brought home to us by the suffering we experience. The more we experience suffering, if we have discrimination, if we have a shrewd judgment, we should see, why am I suffering? Why am I dissatisfied? Because I'm seeking happiness outside. What is the solution? Seek happiness within. And where does happiness lie? It lies only within. It doesn't lie outside. But even the happiness we seem to derive from external things is happiness which is already within us. Like Bhagavan used that analogy of the dog that went to a cremation ground. And the dog was very hungry. It found an old dry bone. It started chewing on the bone. And because it was an old dry bone, it splintered and it caused cuts inside the dog's mouth. So when the dog dropped the bone, it saw, oh, nice red blood there. So it licked the blood and said, oh, this is a very, very tasty bone. And it went on chewing the bone. Such as the happiness we seem to derive from external things is coming only from within. So long as we have the lack of the aviveka, the lack of discrimination, the lack of shrewd judgment, to think that things that we will get happiness outside, our mind will continue going outside and will continue suffering. As our mind matures, we come to recognize more and more clearly that there's no real happiness to be derived from this world. We can find happiness only within. So suffering is part of the process. Yes, it's suffering, but motivates us to turn within. That is, the external suffering is pushing us within, and the internal happiness is pulling us within. So Bhagavan is helping in both ways. He's giving us a push from outside in the form of suffering, and he's giving it a pull from inside in the form of happiness. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. And the second part, I think, is also, I think it's kind of answered in this, which is that the sort of violence in the news, violence against women, all the sorts of things going on in the world are very, very disturbing. What happens when people in political power do all these kinds of horrible things. And it's very confusing and so on. And can you talk a bit about this? And is the answer that it's all a dream, simply? Yeah, I think in a way this has already been answered, really, but yeah.
Yes, all this is a dream, but so long as we are dreaming, it seems real. And so naturally, I mean, I don't know this person where they come from, but recently in London, there was a woman was abducted and murdered, and the prime suspect is actually a policeman. But that has created a lot of, I mean, a lot of women have expressed, but they live in fear every day, but women aren't safe going out. That is, the behavior of many men make women feel unsafe. And though it's relatively, it's only a tiny percentage who actually face such a violent end, naturally women do feel threatened. So this is very disturbing. I mean, it's very understandable, but it's disturbing for them, and it's very frightening. But what is the solution? Obviously, so long if one is a woman, you obviously have to take precaution. If one is a man, you have to do all you can to help women feel safe. I mean, men should act appropriately, and women, unfortunately, because there are men who don't act appropriately, it's unfortunate there are restrictions on women. I mean, it shouldn't be the case, but it is the case. Women have to be careful. They have to take care not to go in lonely places or whatever. I mean, they have to recognize the dangers that there are. But so long as we're looking outwards, we have to take all precautions and act in an appropriate manner. But the ultimate solution to this problem and all types of problems is to turn within. Because so long as we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as a body in a world. And okay, if one is a man, one doesn't face the same dangers that women face, or at least not so much. But still, life is a problem. Life, that is the dangers that women face in the form of violence and whatever is just one of the many problems in this world. We all face problems of one sort or another. So life is a series of problems. And even if we live a relatively comfortable life and relatively, nobody has a completely problem-free life, but if our problems happen to be less than other people's, sooner or later we're going to grow old, we're going to get sick, and even if we live a healthy life up to an old age, a day is going to come when we're going to die. So life, there's no lasting happiness to be found in this external world. Whatever limited happiness we find is very fleeting. So if we want a permanent solution, the only solution is to know what we actually are. And to know what we actually are, we need to turn within. So I don't mean to trivialize the problems we face. When we allow our mind to go outwards, the problems we face seem very real. And we have to act appropriately to avoid these problems as much as possible. But the solution is not to be found outside. The solution is to be found only within ourselves. So long as we identify this body as I, body is in danger. That is, what is the most dangerous pastime? Being born, living. Because sooner or later, this body is going to reach its end. Whether it's going to, tomorrow when you cross the road, you're hit by a bus and that's the end of it, or whether after 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, the body dies a natural death. Sooner or later, this death is the one thing that is guaranteed for this body. So we need to look for a permanent solution. That is, the problems are there, so long as we identify ourselves, a body as I. So how to separate ourselves from this body, how to break this identification, it is only by self-investigation and self-surrender. So I hope that answers that question.
And I think it's David, Marianne, and then Dan.
Right.
And I think that should do enough for today. 3 questions.
Yeah,
David, Marianne, Dan.
Okay,
Hello,
David.
Michael. Well,
right. Okay.
David actually wanted to ask a question as well, but going back to Arunachala, I remember reading, I mean, I've been there, but and it was quite scary, but I read that when Bhagavan was quite old, he'd been at the mountain for a number of decades. He experienced going up there and told people not to go to a certain spot because it wasn't safe. And if the mountain was a part of him, is that an indication that within all of us there's some sort of space that's not safe? Or why was it he wouldn't go to this particular area on the mountain?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which incident this is referring to. There is one thing, when Bhagavan was young, he used to wander over the hill a lot. One day when he was wandering, he saw a very large banyan leaf in a dry stream bed. So he looked up and he saw higher up the mountain was a very big banyan tree. So there's mention, this is on the north side of the hill, there's mention in the Stala Purana about Arunachala in the form of a yogi sits under a banyan tree on the north side of the hill. So when Bhagavan saw that banyan tree, his curiosity was aroused and he started to go towards that place. At a certain point, he couldn't continue further in the dry riverbed, so he had to come out. As he was climbing out, his leg brushed against a hornet's nest. And the hornet stung his leg, that's well known. And then that stopped him going to that banyan tree that day. People asked him later on whether he had ever tried to go to that banyan tree again. And Bhagavan said, the thought never occurred to me. What some devotees say is that Arunagiri yogi, that yogi who's sitting under that banyan tree, according to the Stala Purana, that is Arunachala itself in human form. So that Bhagavan himself is that Arunagiri yogi. So if he had gone to that place, he would have stayed there and he would have been lost to the world. Nobody else has seen that banyan tree. So it's maybe on a more subtle plane, that banyan tree and that yogi are there. And anyway, Bhagavan never went to that particular place again. He never had any curiosity to go and find that mountain. That's one thing. Another thing, it is said, but when some renovation was being done there's a village on that is Tirunamala is on the east side of the hill. On the west side of the hill, there's a village called Adiyanamlai. Adiyanamlai, there's another temple there, which is also Arunachaleshwara temple. It's a sort of small Arunachaleshwara temple. Once they were doing some renovation work there, and while removing some paving stones, they found a passage going down. And nobody was sure what to do about this passage. When this was reported to Bhagavan, he said, let them close that passage and let no one try and go there. When people asked him about that, Bhagavan said, the description of that is a description that he saw in one of his visions, where there was a tunnel and he went down into it and he went into the center of the hill. And that again is described in the Puranas, but then there's a huge cave in the center of the hill with all sorts of, it's a very delightful, like a delightful garden or something. Bhagavan had seen such things in his vision. He said nobody should go there. It's not that it's dangerous, but that is, Arunachala is God himself. The appropriate way to worship Arunachala, as Bhagavan himself showed us, is to walk around the hill. We need not try and find ways inside the hill or anything like that. We need not go searching for any banyan tree. Our aim is to surrender ourselves, and an act of devotion to Arunachala is to go around the hill.
And that's enough for us. We don't need to do any more.
We don't need to do any more. But what is the significance of going around Arunachala? That is, Arunachala is that which is shiny in this eye. So like the moth going around the flame of a candle, we should be going round, our attention should be constantly dwelling on that eye. That is going round and round that eye, like the moth going round the flame. Sooner or later, that moth will go a bit too close and it'll get burnt by the flame. Sooner or later, if we continue turning our attention within, we'll be caught in that flame of pure self-awareness.
Right. So it's very symbolic, but also very real.
Yes. What we call ultimate, all names and forms are real only from the perspective of the mind. What Arunachala is, though, so long as our attention, we're looking outwards, we see Arunachala in the form of a hill. But what Arunachala is that nameless and formless pure awareness that is ever shining in our heart as I. Right. So these things are real at a certain level, but the ultimate truth is only I am.
Right. Thank you.
Right.
And now David would like to ask a question.
Yes. Yes.
Michael, you talked about keeping the mind in check.
Yes.
I think, yeah. How do you do that in practice?
So long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas. Turning the mind back within to attend to I, that is keeping it in check.
So what is that in practice, turning the mind within? I mean, what do you actually keep doing that yourself?
Yes. That is, words cannot adequately describe it, but it is trying to be self-attentive.
Right.
That is, we are always aware I am, but generally our attention is going towards other things. So though we're that background awareness, that self-awareness I am, is ever there in the background. So we're always self-aware, but we are negligently self-aware because we're more interested in attending to other things. So we have to cultivate that interest in just being and attending just to ourselves.
So do you actually set aside a certain time of day in which to do that? Is that advisable?
The advisable time to set aside is the present moment, because that is the only moment that is at our disposal now. So every moment is an opportunity for us to turn our attention back to I.
Right. Okay, so there's no set period of time to do that.
Bhagavan never recommended that. Because when is I available? I is always available. So at every moment, we have a choice whether to attend to other things or attend to ourselves.
Right.
So
thank you. Well, that disabuses any idea of meditation and things like that.
It can be useful. So we have to find what works for us. It's certainly useful to have some time when our mind is, that even in the midst of other activities, who is active? I am. So we can be attending to ourselves, even in the midst of any other activity, whether physical or mental or vocal activity. We can be at least having a tenuous current of self-attentiveness going on in the background. But when it seems to us that we can't go very deep within when our mind is engaged in other things. So it's useful to have some time. It need not be a fixed time, but whenever we have some time, a few minutes here and there, we can try and go deeper within.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
right.
I think it's Marianne now.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear, yes.
Just a quick question, Michael. I mean, everything, I can see why this is the direct method, but I just wonder why it has been said, I think in the scriptures, and a lot of gurus have said that because we're living in Kali Yuga and, this is just such a terribly corrupt time and so on, that chanting in the Kali Yuga, chanting is the best way chanting the name of the Lord is the best way. What do you say to that?
For some people, yes. That is what is best for one may not be best for another. That is we're all on a spiritual journey. So we are progressing along the path. At a certain stage, that chanting may be the most appropriate practice for us. But that doesn't mean it's the most appropriate practice for everyone. So we have to find what is it that appeals to us? What is it that draws us? We all may sometimes chant. We sometimes chant Arunachala Shiva, for example. Bhagavan songs to Arunachala. There's no wrong with chanting, but I mean, it's good chanting, but what is important is not the mere chanting, it's the love with which it's chanted. I think in some other texts it is said, for Kali Yuga, the best path is bhakti. That's more open, because what is bhakti? For some people, chanting the name of God is bhakti, but it's bhakti only to the extent that it's done with love. That is, bhakti means love. So it's not, the action is not bhakti. It is the love with which you do it that is bhakti. But of all forms of all the practices of bhakti, the best is this self-attentiveness, because God is that which is always shining in our heart as eye. So long as we're looking outwards, we may see God in name and form, or we may conceive of God in name and form. But the reality of God, what is his true Swarupa, is only that which is shining in our heart as eye, that pure awareness. So turning our attention within, according to Bhagavan, according to Shankara, that is the highest bhakti.
Yes, I just wondered why, that thing came up specifically about Kali Yuga, because it's so impossible to overcome all the terrible things of Kali Yuga. I mean, we are living in a dreadful age anyway, it seems. Well,
But has it ever been not a dreadful age?
I don't know. I mean, they say that the other ages are better, but they're millions of years away or something.
Yes. That may be suitable for some people to believe that, but the world was never meant to be a perfect place.
No. Okay, thank you. I just thought of that. Yeah. Because that was what I had been told a lot, beforehand.
Yes. There are so many beliefs, and the different beliefs, we are not repudiate others' beliefs, because whatever people believe is what's suitable for them at their stage of spiritual development. So Bhagavan's teachings are for those who are looking for something deeper. So we are not to go out in the street and start propagating Bhagavan's teaching. That would be inappropriate and also futile, because most people will not be drawn to Bhagavan's teaching. Bhagavan knows who is ready for his path. He will bring them in some way or other.
Okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean other paths are wrong. They're right for people at their stage of spiritual development. But this is the ultimate path.
So you shouldn't read the scriptures too much then, because I mean, I don't know where in the scriptures it says that, but
there's innumerable things in the scriptures that the scriptures of India, the Vedas and the Upanishads, and then all the supplementary texts and everything, they're a vast, vast ocean. And the yoga scriptures will give completely different views, and the Vedanta scriptures give a different view. So there's so many different views. And there are also Buddhist scriptures and Jain scriptures, and I mean, there's no end to it. And there are Christian scriptures and Muslim scriptures. So which scriptures do you choose? We have to find what is suitable for us and follow that. All these scriptures are good for people at certain stage of their spiritual development.
yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then Dan.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Thanks for your time. Actually, it's probably a good lead-in, talking about all the different scriptures and, you know, the different people that seem to take to and resonate with them. Obviously, that in itself sort of leads into my question, which is that everything seems to be something of a contradiction, really. Like, you know, how can all these different things resonate with different people when really there are no different people for them to resonate with? It's like, even the fact that I'm drawn, I feel drawn to listen to you and people that, you know, have a similar sort of message, but even that in itself seems like a contradiction, because my understanding and my feeling is that you, myself, Bhagavan, you know, aren't anything other than fluctuations of awareness, or whatever you want to call it anyway. So is following the sort of teachings not just another distraction from attending to the self? It's just something I struggle with a lot. Okay. Whilst I feel drawn to them, I also feel that somehow they're a distraction.
What is real? What is real is only ourself. I am. Everything else is an appearance. Following the teachings means clinging to I am. The Bhagavan's teachings, I mean, there are many different types of teachings, as I say, to suit many different people of many different levels of spiritual development. Even within Advaita, there are many different levels of teachings to suit different people. But Bhagavan's teaching is the deepest and also the most practical. If you read Bhagavan's teachings and understand correctly, whatever Bhagavan has taught us has a practical import, and it is all pointing our attention back to ourselves. So Bhagavan's teachings are there to encourage us to follow the path, to turn within. So if we are able to turn within, if we're able to keep our attention on ourselves throughout the waking and dream states, then no need to read Bhagavan's teachings. But the fact is, because we still have strong Vishaya Vasanas, our attention is constantly being dragged outwards. So Bhagavan's teachings are very useful to encourage us to turn back within. So Bhagavan's teachings are a constant support until the final moment when we turn within and merge back into the source from which we had arisen. Until that moment, Bhagavan's teachings are our support, our guide, our encouragement. So then they're never a distraction unless we allow ourselves only to be reading his teachings without turning within. But how can we read his teachings that are constantly telling us to turn within? If we have no inclination to turn within, we will also not be attracted to his teachings. Why we're attracted to his teachings? Because we are beginning to have that inclination. When he says turn within, yes, we feel, yes, that's the thing. That's what we need to do. We may find ourselves still have hopelessly strong inclinations to go outwards, but at least there's a little inclination to go within. That little inclination is the starting point. Let us nurture that. That is the seed of bhakti that Bhagavan has sowed in our heart. That is what we have to nurture.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That does make sense, if that's possible. I mean, another
but ultimately, the only thing that makes sense is I am. Everything else is nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the, I mean, sometimes it feels like you're walking a very fine line between just attending to the self and then I guess what other people would call nihilism or nihilism, you know? It's, yeah, is there, I would say, is there a danger in that? But then I guess that, again, that's just another, I don't know. What do you think?
In the Upanishads, this path is described as the razor's edge. But that is because in order to follow this path, there are two things we need to avoid. That is, when we attend to ourselves, we can lose hold on self-attentiveness in one of two ways. Either we allow our attention to go outwards towards thoughts, or we allow ourselves to fall asleep. So we need to remain balanced between the so-called forgetfulness of sleep, the apparent forgetfulness of sleep, and the apparent forgetfulness of getting drawn away into other thoughts. So we need to hold on to that I am. If we hold on to I am firmly, then we escape both manolaya, sleep, and getting carried away by the mind. That is the state of samadhi, where we are balanced between, samadhi means the balanced mind. That's not the literal meaning of samadhi, but it's one explanation of samadhi, but it means samadhi. Sama means balanced, in equilibrium. Di means the mind. So where the mind is in a state of equilibrium between thought and sleep, in other words, just holding on to I am, that is true samadhi.
Right, on the razor's edge.
Yes.
But why does the self or the awareness or whatever, you know, whatever term you want to use, why does it, I think I've heard you explain before, but maybe it's just something that's never quite resonated or clicked, but why does it create such complexity of, you know, of this virtual reality type thing, you know? Why does it sort of diverge from itself apparently to create this entire fantasy world and all these masses of scriptures only to guide itself back to itself? I've never really grasped that.
Okay, two things. Firstly, we need to be, language can easily mislead us. We talk about the self as if it's something other than ourselves.
As if it's ours.
We refer to it as it, but it's not it, it is I. That tattvamasi, you are that. So we need to constantly remember, okay, we have created this world, but when we are in sleep, there is no world. The world appears only in waking and dream. That is, the world appears only in the view of ego. So it's not our real nature. It's not our self as we actually are, but has created all this. It is only ego that has created all this. So then you may ask, then why do we rise as ego? Bhagavan said, first investigate this ego and see whether it's ever risen. If you investigate yourself, you will see that you are just pure awareness and have therefore never risen. Then there's no, the question why or how becomes redundant. There is no explanation. There is no explanation. Everything is explained by ego. That the cause of everything is our rising as ego. What is the cause of rising of ego? Investigate it and you'll see it never rose. And therefore there never was any problem. So what we need to inquire or investigate is not why or how, but who or what. Who am I? What am I?
Yeah. It's just the ego that's demanding this answer of why and how.
Because it's another excuse for the ego to go outwards.
Yes, sure.
We're looking for a reason, for a cause, for something other than ourselves. But we are responsible for the mess we're in. We can't put the blame on anyone else.
So I would say, why has awareness forgotten itself? But again,
awareness
that's just a
has never,
question from you.
pure awareness has never forgotten itself.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, that will keep the ego busy for some time.
You don't want the ego to be busy, you want ego to be subsided. That is
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, irony. Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Okay.
I think we can close now, Michael.
I don't think so. I think David.
Oh, we have one more. Okay, then can I just
yes.
make a quick comment before this last one? I just, because I didn't raise my hand up because I wanted to leave it right to the end. It was just a very quick comment. There's and this is because I do Indian philosophy, so I just felt the need to clarify something, which is that there is a lot of politics and a lot of sectarian politics, which has been superimposed. And in fact, these different traditions, whether they're Buddhist or Advaita or Sankhya, whatever it might be, they learned a tremendous amount in discussion and debate with each other, a lot of which is forgotten. And also, so to even understand the early Buddhists, it's in a context, or the Jains, of the Upanishads, but before that the Vedas, and vice versa. But also to understand Advaita Vedanta, it's impossible to have Shankara without the Buddhist Madhyamika and Yogacara, which are about 600 to 800 years before that, because the idea of even the rope and the snake, the world being a dream, that is, this is just consciousness, sort of pure awareness, and it's a sort of a dream, or whatever it is, that is Yogacara, and so on. The idea of this illusion, that is Madhyamika. It's not in the Upanishads. That's what I'm told repeatedly by the scholars and the investigation done. And at the same time, the Buddhists learn from the Advaitins. I mean, the reason for Gaudapada being just before Shankara and paying homage to the Buddha is because, you know, they learn from each other. There are debates, there are some problems, and they go back to the drawing board to express the deepest experiences differently. The idea of pure awareness and this self-awareness, it's straight out of Yogacara. Some other Buddhists criticize them. Kashmir Shaivism, they, in fact, when I began reading it, it is, in fact, even more reflective of Bhagavan, in the sense of this whole world being their pure awareness only. And that Vimarsha is simply, you know, whatever to explain, but it's not what it seems. It's closer than even Shankara, who I believe, unlike what Bhagavan said, I kept looking for this thing, that this world is just Brahman, but actually it's the Jiva, which is that, you know, that Paramatma and all. That's what I've been told anyway. The point simply being that in a way, one can go back to these different things. One need not, but there is a very deep reality, that deepest reality. It may be approached differently. It may be expressed differently because there's slightly different cultures, provinces, languages, contexts. But in some of these, I have simply not been able to distinguish. I mean, once you start saying that ultimate reality is pure awareness, it's this deep, whatever, this kind of just givenness, is not an object in any way, it's non-conceptual, etc. Where the difference is beyond me, except in the words and the approach. That's simply my feeling. A lot of academics don't like this, but that's at a different level. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of ego is about this sectarianism. And of course, one must be discriminating, have viveka. And I'm not saying that. But a lot of it is ego, you know, that is only been said by the Brahmanical schools, you know, Advaita Vedanta. It's against the Buddhists, they're actually Shunyavadins, they deny everything or whatever. It's simply not the case, because there's a lot of politics of misrepresentation. And even, you know, like a lot of, and a lot of some of the teachers like Shivarudra Balayogi and so on, I think what they're trying to do is that, you know, for a lot of people, it's difficult to go, you know, from kindergarten to, you know, the ultimate. And it's trying to bring the awareness, you know, to sort of deepen it slowly, because sometimes we just get lost. And anyway, that's what I wanted to say, that, you know, one has to be a little careful here. And words, because the meaning of the words in different traditions, different teachers can be a bit different. Even this thing of Yogacara, the mind, actually, it's a consciousness only school. Ultimately, there is only consciousness, that pure awareness, that pure consciousness. A mind is sometimes used by the Buddhists in different ways, but just as self, they think it's just the ego. And they think that if you say that this self exists, you're going to start clinging to something, grasping it, and again become confused and bewildered and suffer. So it's just, you know, these different ways of approaching. Anyway, that's my little spiel, and on to David.
But Bhagavan never read any, later on he read, but he never read any of these things. All that Bhagavan learned, he learned from the silence of Arunachala, which turned his mind within, and he merged back into his source. So everything that is, if we study all this in a historical perspective, yes, there was so much, there was so much interaction between these different philosophers, and each one was feeding off each other one. So they all made contributions to each other, but outside the context of all this history of Indian philosophy, Bhagavan, just in one moment as a 16-year-old boy, all that was to be known, he knew it. So because Bhagavan never studied the Upanishads, all these things, later on he became aware of all these things, but he didn't, that is, he was a Brahmanyani before knowing any of these things. So Bhagavan didn't attach much importance to all these different systems of philosophy. Bhagavan just gave us the simple essence of everything. Even sometimes if people said, ask Bhagavan, are you an Advaitin? Bhagavan said, if you say, or Bhagavan said, yeah, it is, people say so, but I don't consider myself this or that. That it's Bhagavan had no identity. He didn't, identity is the whole problem. That's what we're trying, that is, to identify yourself as, I am a Buddhist, I am an Advaitin, I am a Dvaitin, I am this, I am that. That is ego. That is the root problem that Bhagavan is concerned about. So Bhagavan has simplified it. He's bypassed the need for a lot of this. I mean, if we're interested in philosophy, we can go on for lifetimes studying Indian philosophy. It's a vast, vast ocean. I think there's probably far more philosophizing was done in ancient India than in the whole of the rest of the world. There's so many different schools of thought and so much interaction between them. But all that is unnecessary. All we need to know is who am I, which is the essence of the whole of all Indian philosophy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
Right.
David or Lorraine?
It might be because I was born on the 30th of December, but I'm really beginning to identify with Bhagavan. I've been being sued and I've got to go to court. And earlier in the session, you said, body and mind are destined to do things. And so I've really got to think about that and think that he is using my body, speech, and mind to break this identification. It is not I. Is that a good way to go about this lawsuit? I know he was sued as well.
Yes. There's no advice that can be given on external things. What is going to happen is going to happen. If you're going to be sued, you're going to be sued. If you're going to defend yourself in court, you're going to do so. Leave it all to him. That is, whatever you're destined to do, you cannot avoid doing that. But your only task is to separate yourself from all these things. Don't be concerned about these things.
Right. That's very good advice. It's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah. That is it. Our aim is to turn the mind within, not to allow it to go out to all these things.
Mm-hmm.
If we allow it to go out, then should I defend myself? Should I not defend myself? All these things, it's unnecessary. What is to happen will happen. Your body, speech, and mind will be made to do whatever is necessary to do in order for you to experience what you're destined to experience.
So just trust.
Yeah, just trust.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay.